You're listening to Season 3 of the Fairways People podcast, where we share inspiring stories, meaningful conversations, and the voices behind our charity. Each episode offers a closer look at the people and passion that drive us. Hosted by Fairways Managing Director Gareth Webb.
Hello and welcome to another Fairways People podcast. And today I'd like to welcome Matt Smith from Smash Life. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing very well, thank you, mate.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your time. Normally it's a double act, and you promise it. I know you'd have to be called away to support a young person, as I would expect. You know that comes first. So, but yeah, I appreciate your time, and it's a shame and catch up Andy as well at some point. But so welcome. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. All the better that England beat Congo last night, because I did think we'd have a very depressed nation this morning. But thanks to Harry Kane and 2 goals, we've all woken up with a smile on our face, and I'm feeling very chipper, thank you.
Absolutely. God, that was a bit close, though, wasn't it? It was towards the end.
It was. I was reaching for the Prozac, but when he scored 2 of those goals, I was walking on sunshine, and I had Katrina and the Waves on as I danced through the streets of Shrewsbury.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, what I'd like to do with my guests is just just to introduce a little bit about yourself before we go into a bit of conversation. So over to you, Matt. Please introduce yourself.
So my name's Matt Smith. I'm 44 years of age, and I grew up in the UK care system, having lived with my biological parents alongside my brother for 5 years. We were taken into the care system, and from that, we've got the lived experience of growing up from the ages of 4 and 5 up until the ages of about 23, 24. So we've gone right through the care system and we've had great foster homes, and we had an unfortunate one where we were unfortunately abused for 8.5 years. But what's survived from that is the relationship between us. So we talk about that in our Smash Life talks. The sibling bond is important, and how we can keep siblings together. Sometimes that's the only support network people have coming out of the care system. And we started a company, Smash Life, in 2018, having worked in the social care arena, both of us separately, for a combined 50 years. And we started that in 2018. It's in its 8th year in November. We've got mentoring, we do keynotes, we've got a woodland, we've got a football team, we do fun days. We've got a staff team of about 6 or 7 mentors now. And we're all about trying to give back to those young people the positive role models, the positive experiences, and the help and support that we didn't have growing up in the system back in the day.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's and you spoke at our conference at the end of last year. So I've heard your journey, which is very inspirational in terms of how where you've come to, and now what you're trying to do for young people in the care system, your mentoring, etc. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. What I'd like to do, if it's all right, what I also ask my guests is, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your childhood and sort of where you grew up, what that was like?
So, I grew up in a place called Shrewsbury. Now, if you don't have money, it's Shrewsbury, and if you've got loads of money, it's Shrewsbury. Oh yeah, Shrewsbury. So when I grew up, it was called Shrewsbury. And I grew up with my biological mum and dad for the first 5 years, and with my 2 other brothers, Richard and Andy, from the same mum and dad. And unfortunately, their relationship ended, and we were living with our mum, and she couldn't cope. Richard's got additional neurodivergent needs. And she was a young mum. She'd go out, party, and leave us on her own. And then one night, the police, who'd warned her several times, broke into the property, took us into the care system. So my introduction and Andy's introduction to the care system was the back of a police car, into a crisis placement, as it was known back then, for a week, straight into a long-term fostering placement for 2.5 years in a rural setting of Shrewsbury, which we're all together. Richard, Andy and myself were all together with very experienced foster carers who were fantastic. Janet and Dave, they looked after about 170 kids over 30 years. So then our social workers obviously wanted to move us on, and Richard went to live with 2 people that he lived with for 30 years. So he lived an hour away from us to cater for his additional needs. So he had to go to specialist provision, whereas Andy and I stayed together and we moved in with two people that didn't have a lot of experience looking after children, weren't trauma informed, were probably back then seen as the ideal candidates because they had the 2 cars on the drive, the 5-bedroom detached house. And on paper, it looked like we'd won the lottery, but it turned out it was anything but. They didn't have that trauma-informed approach that we needed. It was a very behaviouralist approach. There was a lot of physical and emotional abuse. So we stayed there for 8.5 years, and then that broke down. So we both got kicked out at different times. I got kicked out first, just before my GCSE results, and Andy got kicked out about 3 months later. And then we moved into the post-16 world, which is very, very difficult to navigate when you haven't got that consistent adult around you. You aren't told of your rights or responsibilities. So I very much went from a very strict home where I wasn't allowed to do anything to, mate, it's party time. And it was like being given the VIP access badge, when you can do what you want, when you want, here's a key, come back when you want. It's just rock and roll and drinking, smoking, staying in bed all day with my girlfriend instead of going to college. But then that culminated in me thinking, I need that routine, I need that stability. And I moved in with a family for a year who helped me achieve that. I actually moved into their shed for 4 months because they didn't have a room. And they'd taken my brother in first, and I lived with them. They gave me that sense of family, that support, and I actually started to thrive. And I completed my college course, which actually my results spelt done, which I was told wasn't very good at the time. A D, a U, and an N. And I went through and I went to Bath University and I did sociology. And I'm going to be honest, mate, I moved to Bath and I moved in with 5 lads. One of them was a DJ, so you can imagine what the house was like. It was like living with Fatboy Slim. And I lived there and partied. My social worker never checked up on me. It was literally like a phone call like, you doing all right, Matt? Still need the rent paying? Yep. And I was luckily going out with a girl then who had her head screwed on. They like the bad boys, don't they, these lovely girls? And she was going to Leicester to study footwear design. And I said, right, I want to move with you. So I found the Youth and Community Development course and I went to university and I actually got through that degree. And a little side story I probably said in my keynote was I sent a picture to my abusers of me sticking my middle finger up with my degree certificate. And I sent it recorded delivery. And so I know the bastards got it. So they got that. And that was the motivation where I could have, made some bad decision, gone to prison, fighting. Yeah. All of that stuff we see young people going down, unfortunately, the negative routes, but we turned it into a positive. And here I am, 28 years later, where trying to still look like Liam Gallagher. I've still got my hairline, which I'm thankful about, but still laughing about some of the experiences because some of them are funny, but still in recovery, if that's what you want to say, still reeling from it, still trying to make sense of it, but meeting awesome people like yourself, Gareth, and, Fairways. It really filled my heart last year when we came down to the conference and to see the homes that you've built, to watch the videos, to meet your staff. And I'm not just saying this to be tokenistic. We go and see a lot of professionals and places, and it's not what the brochure sometimes tells you. It's how people make you feel, and you guys made us feel amazing. So if that's how you made us feel, I can't imagine the amazing work that you're making young people feel in the homes and the services that you're running at Fairways. So here I am, 2026.
Okay. Yes. Wow. Well, firstly, thank you. I appreciate them kind words, and that means a lot. That mean a lot to staff as well, because we're passionate about what we do. So to hear that from someone like yourself is really heartwarming. Thank you. Okay. Wow, that is a journey. Just a couple of questions, I guess, for listeners. So you were placed into that foster care placement. I think you said Janet and
Dave was the first one. Yeah,
Dave. So for 2.5 years, which you said was really good, positive. See, if you were set there, just listen. How come you were moved onto another placement? You spent 2.5 years, which seems a long time, by what sounds like a loving and caring family, and then you were moved. What was that about?
I think initially it was only going to be short term. 2.5 years was seen as long term then, and I think social services were always honest with us and said, we've got to find you a new mum and dad for you to live with. And the search went on. And unfortunately, one family was found for us all, but they turned around and said they weren't the right people for us. And at the time, I felt that rejection as a child because we began to meet them and have those kind of meetings and, try and form those
Right,
bonds.
right, yeah, yeah.
But I look back and I actually think, wow, how brave must they have been to turn around and say, do you know what, we're not the right fit for these lads. And maybe if the other people would have admitted that or just stopped and said, we need some help. And I always talk about lowering the ego. And even as professionals, even myself, like, I don't know all the answers. I don't claim to know. I can be as trauma informed as I want, but every case is unique. Every person is unique and the world is changing. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think for social services, they were deemed as short-term foster carers. So it was like, we need to get these lads out so we can move other young people in. It just felt
Yeah.
like a constant stream of young people coming into the system. You're moving on.
Yeah.
And then weirdly enough, we've met the people that moved in after us.
Oh, okay. Right.
So
So
they were short-term foster carers and they had
yeah.
170 kids over 30 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
What a couple. Amazing.
yeah.
Okay, so then you obviously moved to this other family for 8.5 years, which, as you say, you experienced a lot of abuse,
Yeah.
which I couldn't even imagine. But I guess 8.5 years is a long time. Was there sort of like, any red flags, warning signs, support? Did any of your social workers, anyone pick up on what was happening, or just yeah?
So when we do our keynotes, we put a slide up which says 8.5 years, which is about 3,102 days. Why wasn't anything spotted? Why weren't the red flags spotted? And we try and get professionals to think like, what are the lessons we can learn from this? Because we want to offer solutions rather than just dump our trauma on everybody and leave and say,
Yeah.
thank you very much. And I would say, interestingly enough, we've only found out this since the foster carers, Janet and Dave, the good ones, they actually raised concerns with the professionals that they felt they weren't listened to. And we found that with certain foster carers, they don't feel they're listened to by professionals. You usually have a senior social worker who sits at the top, a manager making those really important decisions. And we're always saying, let's get the voices of everybody, the people that spend the most time with the young people as well, those classroom assistants, the people that might not have the titles, but have the currency and the time invested in that young person. So red flags, interestingly, I've got our files, so I read them again two weeks ago. Why wasn't the abuse spotted? So it was a very middle class area. So the judgments from professionals was, lads, you're very lucky to be living here because of the material aspect, not about how it made them feel. They were very clever. Reading my files, I read one extract, which I'm going to share on our social media, about how she stopped a meeting happening between me and my social worker at the school because she felt it would disrupt me. And in a subtle way, she kept the meetings at the family home so they could control them. But also we presented very, very well. We were very polite lads. We dressed well. Nobody felt there was an issue. And as children, we didn't really have anything to compare it to. So we felt a lot of the time the punishments, the behaviour of them was very normal when it was anything but. And it's only becoming a man and an adult and seeing how other people have grown up from going to sleepovers, going around people's houses, you start to go, this isn't right. And professionals weren't very curious. I think there's a lot of pressure on professionals to go in. How's the kid doing? Type into their, databases, tick the box and leave. And the reality is there's a lot more young people going into the care system, as we know. Money is tight with local authorities. And I think there is this thing of, we need to keep the family together. We need to make this work because of the money that's already been invested. And I think there was a bit of pride on probably their side. They didn't want to see like they'd failed these three lads. So they just kept going, even though their approach was terrible. So yeah, there's lots of different nuances and different factors as to why. And we weren't told how to report abuse. And the other thing is, back in the 90s, and there's been a lot of research and reports come out about it. care homes weren't seen as these therapeutic little love islands they're seen now. They were seen as very much like, you go to a care home, oh, the stigma was they're for naughty children, and they would threaten us with that. So if we didn't like it there, they'd say, well, if you don't like it here, you can go and live in a children's home. And the connotations back then, because kids, they've got their ear to the ground, they hear stuff, as we know, the urban legends. We knew there was like chances to bullying. We might not have our own room. There could be sexual assault, the fear of the unknown. And you take all that in and you just say to yourself, well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to say everything's fine because it's better the devil you know.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate the honesty. Yeah. Okay. So 8.5 years you lived there, and then we talk a lot about the care cliff edge and the lack of support for sort of 16 plus and 18. And so, how did you experience that in your case? Going into
So
age group?
I was under a full care order. So my post-16, it was the hardest time of my life, but it was also, I look back and think, yeah, it's a bit rock and roll. It was like the Be Here Now album of Oasis. It was just out of control.
Is that where the looks come from?
There you go. So Oasis were a massive influence. They still are. And music has got me out of, where the pain I found myself in. But my social worker at the time, my post-16 social worker, Shirley, was very good at the processes. If I had rent paid, if I needed to be on a benefit, if I had a clothing allowance, she was very good at that. What she wasn't very good at was the emotional warmth, the check-ins, the arm around the shoulder, Matt, you doing okay? Because I presented as a little tough guy, a little Liam Gallagher, I'm fine, I'm doing all right. And we find that with a lot of young men, don't we? We put that armour on, that mask, I'm absolutely fine. And we deflect things with humour. And I definitely did that. And being the older brother, you want to be seen as the strong one, the one that's okay, he's got it together. And you've got to remember, we live in a town where I think for a lot of people, image is everything, and trying to look like you're thriving when you're anything but inside. So I didn't experience the care cut-off because I always had support up until the age of 24 financially, but I was never told of my rights. I was never given that support or met other care experienced young people in a similar position to me to empathise with me and feel a sense of community, which I know there is now. There's lots of great care experience groups that come together, that post-16 community, which is really needed. And yeah, just there was no promotion of positive diversions or getting me into clubs. They never paid for guitar lessons. I taught myself. It's all the extras, the little extras that families do for their children, probably like you do, Gareth, where it wasn't part of the system. It wasn't part of the care that's being offered to children. It's very bureaucratic. It's very system-led. And I just remember, I was in clubs at the age of 16, dancing to Stardust, The Music Sounds Better With You, and just drinking my benefit money away, trying to be a rock and roll star, but trying to swim in an ocean of absolute complexity. And I didn't have hardly any lifeboats out there. There was one or two adults that offered that safe harbour, or come here, here's a jacket, wear this in the storm, and I really needed that at a time where I probably didn't ask for it because I came across as a bit of a thug, probably, or a bit of a moody bastard, but I really needed that nurturing figure.
And talking about that nurturing figure, a lot of people I speak to that's been sort of care experience have said that there's been sort of one person or one significant figure that's really supported them throughout. I know you had each other, you and Andy, for a lot of times throughout, but was there anyone significant that you felt actually that was a bit of a turning point for me?
So Andy and I didn't speak for 10 years in our 20s. Our relationship was very fractured, and that's born out of being made to fight each other, growing up, very competitiveness. And just, I think we reminded each other of what we've been through. And like most siblings, you go off, you find yourself, you form your own attachments and your friendship groups. I was the musician, Andy was the sporty type. So it was like Gary Barlow meets Robbie Williams of Shrewsbury. So when you say about the one adult, I think it does take a village to raise a child. And I gravitated towards friends that were a lot older than me, musicians. So my girlfriend's parents were great. You know, they would be the people I'd phone up if I crashed my car. I'd go for advice to about housing. They would help me in the meetings with social workers. I had friends' parents as well that were really good to offer, you know, their home at Christmas time, simple things that we take for granted. I then had a college tutor who applied for a bursary for me because my social worker didn't tell me my rights. And I was lucky enough to get a computer from that, which then I went on to university to then be able to write the assignments. So I'm still in contact with now. So there were people coming out of the woodwork. Then there was Jan Colley, who reported our abuse, the first adult who offered me the shed first and then the home. You know, there's all these different people. Because I was quite a polite young adult, I think adults warm to me. If I was just presenting as like, oh, you know, an angry kind of wounded tiger, I don't think they would have, but I was very polite. I knew how to mask. I was very hyper independent, self-sufficient. And I think a lot of the adults around me warmed to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. Okay, so you've shared, you know, some of your journey, and I appreciate your open and honesty. So what talk about Smash Life then. So what led to that? You and your brother, you know, the founder and directors of that from 2018, I think you said.
Yeah.
Why was that born? Talk to me a little about Smash Life.
I think we both worked in projects and local authorities where the threat of redundancy in our sector is real. And you're constantly thinking, how long is this job going to last? You know, I'd been a youth worker, I'd worked for charities, going in, talking about drugs and alcohol education to kids. You know, all of this stuff. My brother had done the same, community projects where the funding was 1 or 2 years. And we'd had managers where we just felt the culture wasn't right and it was very process driven and they just didn't get it. And I think we just came to a point, it was weirdly at the same time of our life, I got made redundant. So I'd been paid off and I was like, okay, I've got some time now to do something that I really want to do. At the same time, Andy was like, should we just do something ourselves? And it just came at the right time. And that's how it born from it. So all that experience was actually good. So when you're, you know, living it, the other side of the desk, to then go and work alongside, train alongside social workers, residential support staff, youth workers, you know, senior social workers, safeguarding, you see the other side and you go, actually, it's a very nuanced kind of complex kind of arena. It's not as black and white of social workers should have done better. Yes, they should have done better, but we need to look at the world that they're operating in and we need to really go above them and think, as you know, like, are they being given a fair crack of the whip? You know, if you've got seriously high caseloads and you're dumping that on one person, is that realistic? What is the recruitment like of foster carers? You know, is it just a tick box exercise or are we actually understanding them as people? How do they make us feel? So yeah, all that stuff with Smash Life, it's just grown organically. The opportunity to keynote, like you guys gave us that opportunity. I love it. I love getting up on stage and cracking a few jokes, but also then having the seriousness. And, you know, I do say, like, I want to be like the Gordon Ramsay of this sector, because if he can get passionate about souffle, we can get passionate about young people's lives. My brother, if we were a political party, my brother would be at the front, right? He'd be like, hi, everybody. Yeah. People would be like, we love Andy Smith. And I'd be that spin doctor in the background, the angry, like, keep him in the cage. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like Arthur Shelby, isn't it? Like, it works really well.
Yeah.
And, you know, you find that out, and it's testing as well, running a business. And I think we're at a stage where we're beginning to ask ourselves, what is it we want to do? We're 8 years in now. What brings us motivation and joy? Because it's always been led by what's needed. Well, actually, we're human beings as well, and we need to think about, you know, our lives and how this vicarious trauma affects us, because working with children who have gone through similar experiences and, you know, can affect you as adults. And some people are okay with it. Like, yeah, I'm fine. But some cases still really affect me. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So you touched on it a little bit about keynote sessions, but what else, what does Smash Life offer? Because I know you did some fantastic services, but talk to us a little bit about what Smash can do.
So we started with the mentoring service. So we've got contractual agreements with local authorities where we go and mentor young people with our staff team. So they're on a program of mentoring in and out of care from the years of 8 to 19. So that's our bread and butter. We've then evolved. We then got picked up on the keynote circuit. So residential, education, fostering, foster panel, school, multi-academy trust. They get us in and we talk about trauma and how, teachers can be better or social workers can spot, understanding, the behaviour and all of the stuff and better approaches that you'll know about working at Fairways. It's all a therapeutic lens as opposed to a behaviouralist one, which is what we grew up in. So we offer the training, we offer the talks. And the training, I love delivering the training. I love having some staff for like 4 to 6 hours and having time to tell our story, but then to do activities where we're making them think outside of the box. So, we do that. We've got a woodland. So we have groups of young people that come out and they spend time with us and we do all this stuff, making memories, team building, all of that. We do a fun day every year with a local company to, again, make memories for young people who want to play football but can't join a football team because sometimes their behaviour doesn't allow them to, or they don't have the skills to join those teams. There's that. What's the other thing that we do? So I've touched on that. We do consultancy, but the biggest one that I'm proud of as well is the Post-16 project. So we've run this for Dudley, Worcester and Shropshire. And that's where we get the post-16 age, which is the hardest age, I think, to work with, and the age that not many people want to work with. Everybody loves primary school children, but as soon as children start answering back, they're like, oh, I don't like this. So we work with those young people who have come out of the care system, who need that independent living advice, maintenance of a car, cooking skills, and we have them for 4 days with the local authority we work with, and we go in and we try and give them the tools that we needed and the advice we needed at that age that no one gave us.
Okay, that sounds really good. I like that idea. So that's for 4 days.
4 days we go in and we do workshops on interview techniques, we do the car maintenance, and somebody from the outside would be like, well, that's not very complicated, is it? And it's like, well, no, but we would do that for our own children. We would do that over a lifetime. We'd tell them how to check for the oil in their car. We'd teach them how to cook on a budget. We take them shopping and say, okay, you've got a budget then, but who's actually doing this in the foster homes? I've been out with young people 16, 17. I said, there's £30, buy yourself 5 or 6 meals. And they're like, what? They don't have those skills because no one's shown them. So interview techniques, we tell them about our story to motivate them. We do team building activities to give them a sense of community. We have other care experienced young people that come in and talk to them. So it's not just us. So that'll be females, people from different elements of the community, could be the Black element of the community, which I have no experience myself and I haven't lived it, but I'm recognising that we're getting a lot more young people who are being moved out of county into quite different areas that they've grown up with. So they're beginning to say, well, who am I? Where have I come from? And I want young people who come on those courses to think, there's somebody that I can relate to and that I can identify with, and there is hope for me in the future, because when I was their age, I just thought, no one understands me, no one cares, and I feel like the only person that grew up in that system, which is not true.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, brilliant. I love that. So a few more questions I've got for you. So what what's your biggest achievement so far, would you say?
Do you know what? I know it sounds corny. I would say it isn't growing this amazing haircut. It is discovering concealer, which I discovered doesn't add. Tell you what, mate, game changer. I think it's just waking up every day, realize, and looking back now, especially as an adult, going, wow, look at what we got through and look at where we are today. Because Andy says it a lot in our talks. I couldn't picture myself as the adult. Being an adult when I was this child on my own, how do I get from here to here? And now we're living it. And you take it for granted sometimes, all adults do, but looking back and thinking, I have the capacity to love, I have the capacity to be kind, I have great empathy skills. I'm a sensitive person. I want to help other people. And considering all of the challenges that we both went through and the cruelty that was shown to us, I think that's our biggest achievement, that we've turned out to be actually quite well-rounded individuals. And I'm
Yeah,
proud of
100%.
that.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, that's lovely to hear. So, what? And I guess that was linked to my next question. What's your why? What gets you out of bed in the morning? To do what you do
Well,
each day
apart
for
from the
these young.
page 3 model that I'm dating at the moment. No, so what gets me out of bed? I think music. I'm in a band, so at the weekends I play music, and that's very cathartic. Yeah, I love it. I'm on stage. Look at me. The ego gets stroked, doesn't it? We're all aware of that. But actually, it's something that I really enjoy doing, and the guys that I'm in a band with are amazing. And what's next week? I'm travelling to London to play at Hoxton Hall. For a group of care experienced young people who are going to get some awards, and they're going to perform as well. So what
Oh,
people
wow.
are doing now, they're booking my band to actually come and inspire young people and say, this guy grew up in care. My band's won 3 awards. We've played in Dubai. We've played in Spain. We've played in Poland. We've done probably about 1,000 gigs. We've been going about 11 years. And yeah, I think we should raise those examples. We've got so many now in the sector, which is beautiful. But saying to those 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, look, this could be you. You could go on the similar kind of journey. Because I think we grew up in an era with celebrities and people with all this wealth, but no one sees the journey. No one sees the failures. And I think it's about us being vulnerable as adults and going, look, this has been tough. Like, you see the success now, but the journey has been anything but smooth sailing. Same with you, Gareth. You would have, gone through your own trials and tribulations. And I think we need to be more honest with young people and more vulnerable with them and say, look, I struggle too, and it's okay. We're all in this together, and no one's getting out alive.
100%, 100%. And I'm guessing what your band, is it indie music?
Well,
Oh, wow.
it has been rumoured. So I would say it's a fine blend of, so it'd be like Starbucks, wouldn't it? I'd like a fine blend of indie rock music, rock and roll, old school classics, please, and punk pop, and dance thrown in. So what we try and do is cater for everybody.
Wow.
And that probably comes back to my people-pleasing kind of things that I've acquired from growing up and trying to be liked. I've tried to please everybody, and that's come out and manifested in my band.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so final question. What I always ask as well as guests is, obviously with the chaos of everyday life and sort of, everyone's mental health and well-being, what do you do for your own well-being? And what do you recommend?
This is a really good question, actually, because I think the last couple of years have really tested me. And being open and vulnerable, when you're a young person and you've navigated through different kind of abandonments, you form maybe anxious attachment styles, or you have some elements of avoidance. And what I've had to do in the last few years is look at that stuff, look at the relationships. Why am I attracting certain people and choices into my life? But I don't drink. I drink very rarely. I don't do any drugs, despite being a musician. We'll clear that myth up. I go to the gym twice a week. I'm part of a lads football team on a Thursday that train, which my brother got me into, so big kudos to him. We both go to the gym. We say it's about taking care of our physical health as well as our mental health. And I've been in and out of therapy at different points in my life. And I'm not, I can say that, openly and honestly. I think we need to be open and say, do you know what? It's okay, because we'd go to a hospital if we needed a bandage on our knee, wouldn't we? So let's start normalizing talking therapies. Let's start normalizing that support and supervision. And, we all need it in different ways, whether we get that through a partner. If we haven't got a partner, where are we getting that kind of sense of community or support, or the chance to have a safe space to open up? And realizing that some days you're gonna have tough days, like I do, even now. But Matt, look at what you survived. Look at everything you've achieved. It's temporary. Nothing's permanent, even if it feels permanent in that moment. And I think when we think of men's mental health, we had a friend of ours recently end his own life, and everybody afterwards was like, why didn't he reach out? Why didn't he talk to somebody? And you're left with those questions, but remembering that internal pain is also temporary. and
Yeah.
you will endure. And I'd say to all care experienced people watching this to remind themselves, like, say this little mantra to yourself: you've been through worse than this. You will get through. You will endure. So having those little mantras as well for yourself, and watching inspirational podcasts. There's so much great stuff on TikTok, Instagram that wasn't available when I was growing up for that self-awareness, to reach that self-actualization.
Thank you so much, Matt. I love that sentiment as well. So, and it's good to talk, like you say. So, look, I really appreciate your time. Thank you. It's been an honour to have you on. If people want to learn more about Smash Life, where do they go? What's your website?
www.smashlifeuk.com. So you can see great pictures of me and my evolving haircuts. You can also see a picture of my brother, who is fantastic. He puts his heart and soul into the business, and I have to give him loads of credit. Without him steering the ship, I don't think we'd be anywhere near where we are today. So even though he's not here today, Andy is probably the massive driving force behind Smash Life, and he deserves all the credit and the kudos that comes to him, and our fantastic team. So we're on Instagram at Smash Life UK, and I've built our TikTok up now. So the same again at Smash Life UK. So all the socials, Facebook, we've got a YouTube channel. So once you go to the website, you will have all the links that will drive you to all of those places. But yeah.
Excellent. Cheers, Matt. And say a massive hello and thank you to Andy as well. Yeah, appreciate your time, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Gareth.